Okay, so starting a new job today. It's going to be a little bit more involved than, well, it's just going to be a pretty good involved job. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking the primary case and the the clutch, the stator and the rotor off the alternator. I'm basically going to be taking everything off the left side of the bike here so I can access the drive sprocket, remove it. And the whole point is that what I want to do is I want to change out the bearings in the main shaft in the gearbox. So I've had this bike now. This is my 95 Enfield 500. I've had this since new, so 25 years now. I bought this back in 1995. And ever since then, it's leaked oil out the left side of the transmission through that bearing that's for the main shaft. It's just a really crappy setup. They've got an open bearing there and this really poor seal. It just doesn't work, and oil drips out. They originally have these things from India with grease in them, basically a mixture of grease and oil, but they get warmed up and the oil leaches out and it just leaks and makes a bloody mess. And in fact, I've always had to have something underneath the bike. Like you can see here, I've got a piece of cardboard with some plastic underneath it, so as it soaks through the cardboard, it doesn't get onto the floor. But it's not what I want. I want something that's not leaking all over the place. I don't mind the odd little drip, but there's a lot that comes out of this, and I'm tired of it. So it's time to fix it, time to change it. So I have to take everything off the left side, and then I have to open up the transmission, the gearbox on the right side here, remove everything here, pull out the gear cluster, and my plan is to just clean all the goopy grease that I'm sure is in there, all the junk that's been in there. I've never changed it, so it's got all the little whatever metal filings are in there. They're all in there. I've got no problems with this bike. This bike, as far as shifting, it's actually gotten better over the years. I've got somewhere between 10 and 12,000 kilometers on this bike. It says 12,000 on the odometer, but the speedometer never worked correctly from new, so it always has read high. So I'm actually guessing it's probably a little closer to just over 10,000 kilometers. But the shifting has definitely gotten easier. It's gotten better, even though it's the export left-hand shift. It's gotten a lot better, and the shifting is not so bad. So at first I kind of debated, am I going to do this? Am I going to keep putting up with the oil? Because I really didn't want to mess with something that was working, and it works very well, shifts very well, but you know, I'm tired of the mess. So I know this thing can be taken apart and put back together, and that's what I plan to do. With regard to the shifting, it's got the linkage that so many folks complain about. I actually have never done anything with the linkage. I've never adjusted it. I never took it off and installed different kind of bushings. You can put bronze bushings in and fix it up a little bit, but I never did that. I left it with the original. It was sloppy. But one thing I did do that made a huge difference was I took out the grease fitting here where the shifter goes on to the first connection point there, the first rod, and I put in a 8mm bolt and with a washer and tighten it up so that it doesn't flop around. And you can see it moves a little bit, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. It used to be just, it would go from side to side. It was a bloody mess when you were riding along and trying to get your foot under there. That made a huge difference in being able to shift this nice and neat. And I no longer have to kind of keep tension on the gear shifter anymore to make sure it stays in second or third when I'm shifting up. It just goes in and stays there. So that seems to have done a world of difference. So I'm going to continue on with that. I'm not going back to the grease fitting. It's just not required. So the bearings on this. So there are two bearings on the main shaft, and neither one of them are sealed. It's a design flaw from the original factory that the Indians just kept repeating, and I don't know why they never went to putting in a sealed bearing. They really don't cost any more than the regular bearings, and they keep the oil inside the gearbox and allow you to run the gearbox correctly with oil. You shouldn't be running a gearbox with grease in it. It's not the right kind of, or not the right way to lubricate the gearbox. It should be with oil, with nice gear oil, heavy gear oil. So this is going to be the drive side. This is going to be the left-hand side, sprocket side bearing. This is a 6305 2RS rubber seal, rubber seal on both sides. So I got that one. And this is going to be for the shifter side. And this one is a little bit smaller. It's a 6303, also a 2RS. I wouldn't pay too much attention to those there. It is a 2RS. And there we go. So you can see it's rubber seal, both sides. So that's going to be on the shifter side. And I haven't had any problems with oil leaking on the right side of the transmission, but while I've got it apart, I don't see any reason to leave the old open bearing on there when I can put in a brand new bearing and just make it a sealed bearing and it won't affect anything. And perhaps it'll improve it, but it's not going to hurt it. So we'll get ready to take off the primary case. So the main nut that holds the primary case, it's just one on, is either an 18 millimeter nut or a 3/8 Whitworth. I invested in the Whitworth wrenches when I bought the bike years ago. I'm glad I did. This bike is a really strange mixture of Whitworth, metric, and standard. Like it's all over the place. Mostly metric, mostly Whitworth. But there's the odd one that's like an imperial. I don't know why I say standard. That's an old habit, but imperial measure, right? And just a giant pain in the ass. They could have gone to metric long ago and gone to one, but they didn't. So here we are. So that's that one, and then I need a 17 mil for the footrest, to take off the footrest, 10 millimeter for the bolt that I put on to hold it in place of the grease fitting, and a 13 millimeter for the pinch bolt for the shifter, and then just my ratchet. So I'm going to set up the camera here on the tripod and get busy, get to work. So let's see if I can I'll try to get pretty close. I think that's a good angle, good vantage point. We'll try that. First off, get all my gloves, grab a rag. And I'm going to start by taking off the shifter and the footrest. Go. So let's put that there for now. Let's put these back, actually put these back on so they don't disappear on me. There we go. And the 10 millimeter. Move you out of the way. Oops, there we go. Now when I put this in, I put a little bit of the blue Loctite, the non-permanent Loctite, but it still manages to work its way loose. And I've got a lock washer underneath it as well. And like I say, it still manages to work its way loose. So it's one of the things that when I'm washing the bike or just checking the bike, I regularly will go and have a look at. There we go. So it is an 8 millimeter bolt, 10 millimeter head, but an 8 millimeter bolt. And maybe just give me a second and I'll have a look and see if I'll get the pitch for you. I can't remember what the pitch is, if it's 1.25 or what it is there. And anyway, it's a good thing to do, because now look, you see how sloppy that is? And that is correctly on there. Like that's not